Hey guys, and welcome back to the Quirky Boolers Project. Today we're tackling a bit of a more serious topic. Definitely, we've talked about pretty dumb stuff so far, and we finally decided to get serious about it. We're talking about, is space exploration a waste of money? A fascinating topic that has intrigued a lot of people in the past. Obviously, there was the raging debate about it online in what, 2018,
Yeah, in
2019, right?
2018, 2019, there was a
Right.
huge debate that went on multiple social media platforms. Dumb people tuned
And
in.
Twitter especially. Yep.
Yep, dumb people tuned in, and that's what we're doing today, 3 years later.
And Twitter is painful about it. Obviously, it's the quirky boolers style to talk about something way past its sell by date because that's just what we do. It's still an interesting topic, and since a lot of stuff has stayed the same since 2019, a lot of the stuff, the points that people were making have stayed the same. Maybe this is kind of a summarization of everything that happened there, us including our own points, but all of that. So, fascinating topic. A little bit of context beforehand. Adi is more to the pro side of it, that space exploration is
Right.
critical or at least
It's
important to
necessary,
do.
yeah.
It's necessary, and I'm more on the side key focus on our problems here first. So it could possibly be a waste of money. I'll summarize that in a sec. But before that, I'd just like to talk about a Nebula E magazine, which is an e magazine that our friend has made. It's basically it was created by young people for young people. They want to make physics, and since we're talking about space here, I thought this was the best time to mention it since they're just getting going. Specifically, astronomy, accessible and interesting to everyone. So that's why with each issue they focus on both topical stories and the basics of the universe. Art will be offered to learn together. They're gonna have an e-magazine which educates the youth and obviously for all age ranges. But this is for by young people for young people so that more young people can get into astronomy, and a podcast that will be discussing all of those topics in length as well. So definitely go check that out. They're called Nebula E Science on Instagram. They're doing great stuff already, and you should absolutely go check them out. And let's get into it. I'll do a brief summarization of what we're the two sides of the coin, so to say. My side is mostly that we have so many issues on Earth itself. From energy conservation to global warming, and a lot of efforts that can be put into space travel and space exploration. That and a lot of money does go into it from both private and public companies. A lot of that already goes into space exploration. Instead, focusing even a fraction of that money into current problems that we have on Earth would be much more beneficial. So, what would you say is the pro point in summary?
Right, so, first of all, it makes life on Earth better. The way I say that, like, the way I said that is that there are multiple things that rely on, stuff that we put in space, like satellites and all of that. Those are all because of space exploration, and further, us, this might give us like a chance to find a planet that we might colonize. Again, I'm not talking about the main point exactly. The main point is that it makes life on Earth better, but there are other advantages which I feel are equally as important, that are like providing additional resources and colonization on other planets and all of that. That is also very important, and that is why space exploration is necessary. So again, okay, do you want to counter that, or we could just?
No, so a lot of the time we look at space exploration as in a very wide range of being pro for pro, which is obviously it will benefit Earth. I would just like to follow up on that. How exactly would it benefit Earth?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to assume space exploration to be just basically companies and organizations putting satellites or any other sort of space object into space, right? So spaceships and all of that. So basically, if if you noticed, maps and pictures and all of that is made by satellites, and that is how multiple, even private maps such as Google Maps, that's how it works. It works based off of satellites. Were you aware of that? So that's also
No,
huge.
Sure, I do. But in the debate or in the efforts of you mentioned colonizing another planet.
Yeah.
Mentioned that. Obviously, by some miracle, if we can do that and actually find a way to make that planet accessible to the common public,
Mm-hmm.
which would be, first of all, insane if that did happen.
Right.
The chances are extremely slim, correct?
Yeah.
So a lot of that going into maybe much more pressing topics right now, because Earth is the, I mean, this is just hyperbole here, but Earth is the most hospitable planet we will potentially ever get, because it is
Right.
rich in nutrients, it is rich in water resources, and it has basically a perfect accessibility living situation for us
Mm-hmm.
and for the general public, for the 8 billion plus people that live on Earth. So a lot of that going into, let's say, okay, so let me just give you a quick example here. Since I'm not saying necessarily that space exploration is wasteful, but in examples like the Mars Climate Orbiter, where basically it it had efforts in, it was the second probe in NASA's Mars Surveyor program. It was designed to arrive at roughly the same time as Mars Polar Lander to conduct investigations of Mars's atmosphere, and basically the signals that it reached back to Earth, they never came, and I mean there was that issue, and so $125 million worth of efforts were eventually wasted on that project, and obviously they couldn't have known that before actually doing it. But in areas like that, it really gets you wondering why those 100, how, if those $125 million had been spent on other stuff. And I'm not saying that it would have completely destroyed the problems that we do have, but it certainly would have helped. And on a wider range, maybe 125 million isn't that much, but if you're sitting at home, which is why so many people are against or do say that space exploration is a waste of money, because to the common man, saying $125 million could have gone into Earth's more pressing problems would have been insanely more beneficial to us than it could be to space exploration that has a very slim chance of working out. And that's basically the point I'm trying to make.
Right. So the way I would counter that is by two other examples that I would like to tell you about. So I know how you talked about the Mars Climate Orbiter and how it it was a failure and that money went to waste. But there are other examples that have truly helped Earth. For example, there's something called SMAP, if you knew, Soil Moisture Active Passive. So basically, it's a satellite whose mission is to measure the Earth's soil moisture, and so basically, this helps farmers. This data helps a lot of farmers and a lot of people who are working in the agricultural sector to understand how the soil is in their region. Where getting stuff for themselves, like machinery to measure this moisture, is again hard. SMAP does it instantly for them as like a viable solution for like many years in the future, right? So that is one example, and there are other examples as well. Well, so do you know about how asteroids, like this is like a huge thing in the news? It just comes on and off. How asteroids one day might just crash into the Earth, and yeah. So fighting that. So basically, the way organizations are planning to fight that is basically to just put projectile rockets or like spaceships crashing into those asteroids, trying to like change their route and basically make sure it misses Earth. So this is something that's again going to help the Earth entirely from basic extinction, right? So that is what space exploration does help us do. And other than that, yeah, so that's basically a counter to whatever you just said. Like,
no, definitely, I think some of the things about, I'm not saying it's entirely a con to spend money on space exploration. I'm saying satellites connect the world. Obviously, that's extremely helpful. I'm saying asteroid defender program or whatever the technology that does help in fending off asteroids that even have the slimmest chance of helping even coming near the Earth.
Right.
Obviously, that is extremely helpful, right? So in those areas, absolutely. But then spending more money on, let's say, exploration of Mars or
Okay.
planets beyond that. Obviously, again, you could see the plus side to it being key. Mars has advantages that could eventually make it possible to colonize.
Yep.
But instead, why not focus all of our resources, at least a tenth of our resources, on every single problem that we have? Because if every single, if the tenth of resources coming from many areas, imagine how. I'm not saying quickly, but imagine how efficiently we could tackle one problem at a time. We could tackle education. We could tackle global warming. We could actually fund. I mean, obviously, it is funded right now, but we could properly fund finding an alternative to energy that we use right now, to non-renewable energy.
Okay, so one difference that so first of all, if we do spend money that we spend on, well, orbiters or any other like satellite, or like any other, like, you know, the Mars Climate Orbiter, for example, if we did spend that money on helping education or poverty or hunger, it will help us, but for a very short time. It won't help us much because we are already spending, multiple countries are spending that much money on it already, right? And
Right.
space exploration, it, you might say it costs a lot, but it actually, like, on average, it takes less than about 0.5%. Okay, and most of it goes
But
to the
in
salaries of the
yeah.
workers there. So that means that it does help us create high skill jobs, which are obviously important. And so that is why spending money on space exploration or space, or like on those companies, it, other than just making jobs, high skill jobs those are, it pays off basically. And it helps us
Okay.
find advancements in fuel technologies and other practical applications as well. You want to say anything?
I understand what you're saying, but in the big picture, especially for impoverished countries, if you look at that 0.5%, that is a ridiculous amount of money that could be going into problems to help the fellow man. Obviously, I'm not saying that that 0.5% would fix any of. I can't confidently say it would fix anything,
It
right?
might fix it, but like very temporarily. I'm talking about temporary as in 4 to 5 days. And if you might spend that on like making technology that might help poverty or something like that, it
Yeah.
still will barely make a difference because countries are already spending money on that. And if you talk about impoverished countries, they're not working on space exploration anyways. There aren't many countries that are focusing on space exploration. You need to remember that.
I
There are
do.
some private organizations, and the US, India, and Russia and other countries like that are, but impoverished countries other than India, not really. They aren't focusing on space exploration already. So the countries that are, I wouldn't say that they should stop. Go on.
Okay. So in that regard, right, I would say you would definitely say that one of the one of the cons, sorry, one of the pros of space exploration is we get to explore parts that we would never have been able to if it wasn't for the resources that we are providing there, right? Then
Absolutely.
I would argue that on Earth itself, there is so much that we haven't explored yet. Be it Antarctica, be it the oceans, there is so much on our own planet. Resources that are on our own planet that are yet to be found. That could potentially prove to be extremely vital in whatever problems we are facing. And again, these resources might help in the long run, might help temporarily, but I think it's worth looking on our own planet, because obviously that will cost less money than space exploration itself. So
Mm-hmm.
funding projects to be able to find resources on our own planet that either could short term or in the long term, because we don't know that yet, either in the short term or the long term, to be able to help us. I think that's probably a lot more important and a lot more convenient than going into space in search.
Most of the Earth is something that we have explored, so we would have to fact check that after this podcast, of course. But what I, at least what I've seen in documentaries and all of that, is that most of the Earth is at least predictable. We know what resources and where we will actually find them. Even though there might be some resources that we haven't found, most of it can be predicted and can be understood as not not exactly there. But in space, it's a lot more random chance. It's more of a variable of if we will find it or not. And looking for those resources seems probable in that case because again, that 0.5%, right? So, yeah,
And no, do you have that statistic confidently?
yes,
that
less
it
than
is
0.5%. Yes.
0.5%?
Each economy that does spend at least.
Okay. From each economy, it's less than 0.5%. If you pool that all up, that's a hell of a lot more than we. That
If you pull that
could be going into
up,
other
then
stuff.
most
And,
of the
okay,
other countries also
so
do not
basically-
spend, right? They spend 0% on space exploration because they aren't active in that field, right? Most other countries.
Because then a lot of countries are too impoverished
Exactly,
to be
so-
spending their money on space exploration. So helping them, it's
Helping them
basically
is a
help
very
me help you,
political
right?
situation
So
right
if
there.
you-
It's like that five that again that 0.5%.
I know, but okay, fine. In that perfect world, helping helping impoverished
In that
countries is
perfect
possible.
world, right?
Maybe we don't
Yeah.
live in that perfect world. I acknowledge that. Correct. But even if we spend a few of our conscious efforts on helping those impoverished countries up in that perfect world, I'll give you a hypothetical here. In that perfect world, if we are able, because let's say in that perfect world we're able to fund a space exploration as well without having it impact us on Earth itself, right? So in that perfect world, being able to help up those countries, it would still be a lot more beneficial because then those countries can also pool in their resources. Obviously, even in an imperfect world, our priority should be helping up education. We should be focusing on that. We should be helping up those kinds of countries and those issues. So then, let's say even though they're able to pool in their resources to help with space exploration, it's a quid pro quo, but the helping problems on Earth comes first, I would say.
Okay, so that's where again we are assuming that it's a perfect world, right? In a perfect world.
No, even in an imperfect world, if we focus our conscious effort into that first, into education and helping up other impoverished countries first, then in that hypothetical world, yes, they could pool in their own resources. If not, you still have their independent economy able to provide for themselves. So we don't have to worry about that. That no longer becomes a problem. So that's tackling a problem on Earth before going into space. So all that money that's going into space could be on that, and then those independent economies directly help, because you said 0.5% of everyone's economy, or even less than that, the countries that do help in space exploration. So I would say if you pool those resources into helping impoverished countries up, they could provide their own economies. So it's a quid pro quo that helps, eventually comes around to helping space exploration again.
Even if you do think of that imperfect world, like in that situation where resources might be used to help other countries, it's still a very big if, because most countries wouldn't use that to help other, like, even though that's me assuming that they're bad and all of that, but that's how it has been in the past, and I'm going to assume that to be the same in the future, because not many countries just spend that much money on like problems on Earth.
Because they have their
Let me
own
speak, Nikhil.
problems to
Let me speak.
focus on.
Right, they have their own problems to focus on, but other than that, the part that they leave, that 0.5% that they keep for space exploration, is still worth it, because first of all, even in that imperfect world, there is no situation where I see big countries actually spending that same 0.5% only on helping other countries. They might spend a very small fraction of that 0.5% itself, but that would just be considered insignificant in my opinion, because that is absolutely nothing. That amount of money is not much to deal with. And then even after that, I still think that some countries benefit more from space exploration itself. For example, I'm going to talk about SMAP again. In Africa, where they couldn't exactly check soil moisture, this is the problem there. SMAP helped them. SMAP had their own group which had gone to Africa to help farmers understand and use this data to actually get more efficient produces or product from their agricultural activities, right?
Right. Okay, fine. So in that regard, the quid pro quo meant that space exploration came first, and it helped humanity after using space exploration.
Nikhil,
But
you're
you're-
still assuming that this will that
Yeah,
them
fine.
investing
So
in
in
other
that-
countries, but that's not how it works,
No,
right?
but then it wasn't a guarantee that even SMAP would work. I'm not very well versed on SMAP, but I'm sure with no space exploration, you're 100% positive that would work, right?
What?
So that hypothetical, no, it would you're never sure if any space exploration mission is going to be 100%
Well,
successful.
you could
We
say the
don't
same
know that,
about
right?
activities on Earth, right?
I understand that, but then in that regard, the quid pro quo of having space exploration help humanity or help farmers in Africa.
Yeah.
That was that if. So you're saying there's no possibility where we can trust that if from other countries and helping them up to then help in space exploration if we are using
No,
that
Nikhil,
if
I'm
on
talking
SMAP.
about countries using that. So, like, again, so what you said was instead of using that 0.5% in space exploration, we would help that solve,
Right.
we would help other countries or our own country help solve the problems in itself. For example, poverty or hunger, right? Using that money.
Right.
But if there are other countries, and first of all, we live in India, I'm going to talk about India, that we don't, we spend less than 0.5%. Okay. But other countries, such as the US, might be using 0.5% or maybe a little more or maybe a little less, like around that figure. But again, I don't think that they would use 100% of that money that they had first used for space exploration. In your case, they would use that for solving other problems on Earth. I don't think that they would use that same 0.5% because there are a huge number of employees itself in NASA and in other organizations in the US which are again highly skilled jobs and they are worth it. They help scientific growth and technological growth, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will. And
Okay. Fine. So, alright. So let's say okay, fine. I understand that, right? But okay, fine. Let's say 100% of those efforts, the conscious efforts that are going into space exploration, the around the 0.5% figure. Let's just hold it at 0.5 for the rest of the interview, so we don't have to keep saying less than
Yeah.
that, right? If that 0.5%, I'm not saying 100% would go into helping a small impoverished country up.
are you trying to say
right?
100% of that 0.5%?
No. So yeah, you can't expect a country with a large economy like USA to help us. Let's say a small impoverished country. I'm not going to put an example here because I could be wrong about that too. But let's say we cannot expect 100% of that to go into those efforts.
That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Right? But combined with the efforts that that country is already making, plus even the smallest contribution from a huge economy, would help insanely help, right?
Not really.
And even if they're not, no. So I'm not saying if that country would necessarily put their like their resources into space travel.
I
Right?
personally believe that
But
those countries might just put less money towards, so like that country as in the small impoverished country would stop putting more of their economy, like they would put a less percent of the economy trying to help that poverty, instead move on to maybe military resources or something like that, which they are again less developed in, right?
No, but again, that's an independent problem of that country. We can't, because that's a very generalized example. If a impoverished country doesn't have the, not every impoverished country has the exact same problems, right? So let's branch it all off as independent problems of an impoverished country. So that's their business to do. Okay, fine, but if this is all coming down to politics, I'll give you a different scenario, right? Yeah, okay, fine, but as I said at the start of this podcast episode, which by the way is a lot more serious and something I haven't expected to do for a very long time on this, but it is pretty refreshing. So right, let me give you a different hypothetical. Let's say the overarching problems that everyone on Earth is eventually going to face: global warming, right, or energy conservation. If we spend money right now into those efforts, and intercept the problem. Obviously it's already started, but intercept the problem before it reaches critical mass, because when it reaches that critical mass, whenever our non-renewable resources are about to run out and we don't have that alternative yet, we are going to pool all of our money into that, because when that problem comes, we're going to have to. And when it comes to global warming and all the problems it brings, once that reaches critical mass, we're going to have to find some kind of solution. Instead, if we intercede that problem, that's why I was saying it's prevention over cure, right? That's something they say in the medical industry. Prevention over cure always, right? If we pool, let's say 50% of the resources we have into all of those problems, right? That is still a hell of a lot less than the 100% we would have to spend, because once that critical mass comes on, let's say energy conservation, we are going to pool every single one of our resources into finding that alternative, and then space exploration, I'm sorry, it will get completely neglected, or at least much more neglected than it is right now. So if we spend half the resources that we spend right now, if we take that half of the resources we spend right now on space exploration away and spend it on problems to prevent those problems from reaching that critical mass, I think that would be a huge plus point over whatever we're going for right now, which will lead to catastrophe later
Right,
on.
that's cool. Okay,
Maybe
okay.
not in our generation, but later.
I don't think you have realized the fact that there are tons of actual advantages of space exploration, like that are necessary, that are compulsory, that we have to be ready for. For example, the whole asteroid thing, which is actually a huge problem, which is going to occur at some point. When you talk about that whole, first of all, hypothetical about saving this money to be used for energy problem, right, and all
That's
those.
not a hypothetical. The energy conservation
Yeah,
crisis is coming.
that's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think that there are tons of space exploration projects that help us already with such sort of energy conservation. This is a huge politics thing. This is us assuming that the country will be perfect and use all of its money to spend on energy conservation or something like that, which is not a possible thing. Also, further on, there are tons of ways that space exploration still helps technology advance. Like it really does, and I don't have the exact examples.
Give me one example that would help in energy conservation.
Dude, space exploration helps innovate ideas or technological, even just if not the exact spaceships. But have you ever thought about the ways that spaceships go on, or like satellites move to Mars or to other planets because they can't hold that much fuel in them, right? So the way that they use energy, that efficiency, is something that the whole world could use just from that space from that module that was used in that spaceship, right? Did you understand that?
Okay, I get that. So to the point that you made previously, right, about how space exploration, it is all that hypothetical about energy conservation and how space exploration is necessary in every regard, right? So
What do you mean by
again,
every regard?
No. So, like I said before, right? Some aspects of space exploration are absolutely crucial. Like I said before,
Right.
satellites, asteroid prevention, 150% necessary. I am not denying that, right? But other projects that space exploration entails, which is finding out alternatives, maybe in other planets that we could colonize. Like you said, a lot. Like I mentioned before, 125 million that was lost in. Obviously in going to Mars, the Mars Climate Orbiter, right? So
Right.
instead of in that budget, the budget that goes into that kind of exploration, if that is even cut moderately, and all of that money goes into one pressing problem that we have, that will make it so that when that problem eventually does come, we are actually prepared for it. Because right now, despite all the efforts we are putting in, our population is increasing at an insane rise, which is leading to more energy being used, and I'm tackling energy conservation as its own problem, because
Right.
it's a representation of all other problems, right? So before that reaches critical mass, if we stop that with the money that we're using for maybe projects that aren't as necessary, then that would prioritize Earth as a planet that we still want to live in the future. And I'm not talking about 100, 200 years from now. I'm talking 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now. What? Because we aren't prepared for that right
makes
now
sense.
fully.
But again, there's the whole part where I had said about space exploration also helps us develop new technologies, right? Did you get that? So
Okay.
that whole
I did.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, at least in my regard.
Okay. But that's a lot more of an if, right? That space exploration is
Not
able to
really.
help,
It's not an
with
if.
our most pressing problems, not the little problems that are everywhere around.
Well, in that sense,
I
it's
would
also a
say-
huge if that
Fine.
that the countries are using that money to put on the problem, like 100% of that money.
No. So obviously, in that regard, that all comes down to political
Mm-hmm.
and whether countries want to spend that money on it. But then again, then you could say that not all countries are using that money into space exploration either, right? So if we help the impoverished countries up, you only said that they would not necessarily be used for space exploration from a lot of them, correct?
What? No.
So all of that comes down to. No, you said that impoverished countries, if we help them up, they won't necessarily spend their
Right,
money
because
on
they
space
also
exploration, as
need,
we
like,
said,
even if we help them from poverty, they still need to come back to that developed sense, right, of not just their citizens, but also the fact that they have military support, or the fact that they have some sort of other than just improving the quality of life basically in that area, so making cities and all of that.
Right. So no. So basically, what I'm saying is, if we're able to do all of this, if political differences are set aside in focusing on
But
the
again,
grand
that's a
problem.
huge if. That's
Yeah, exactly. And I'm saying that's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. Since we're talking about if space exploration is a waste of money or not.
Right.
I'm talking in the regard of waste. It is a waste of money because that money should be going by setting political differences aside and focusing on more overarching problems. That's
Right,
basically
but
the point I'm trying to make.
again, so we're in this debate. We're assuming that there's just a perfect world, right? And there's no politics in it, and they're using all of that money to help on the most pressing problems of our time right now, right? For example, energy conservation and
Right.
poverty.
And you're saying that won't necessarily happen.
That won't happen, but let's even assume that it's a perfect world. In that case as well, I still feel that technology advances in space exploration are huge. They've helped us multiple times. I'm going to give you the example of SMAP again. I'm going to give you the example of the ways that there are technology to help energy conservation on satellites themselves and actually harnessing the power of the earth, of the sun, right? So again, if we use that amount of money.
Sorry,
Huh?
sorry. I know that this is a very serious conversation we're having now, but you just said harnessing the power of the sun, and that is actually a line from
Yes.
Big Hero 6. I'm sorry.
pretty sure that's a line from a
I
lot
feel
of
like I had to mention
places, not just.
No, the harnessing the power of the sun with the ancient amulet they found in the attic. Remember
That guy
Amulet is green.
who's
uh.
Fred.
Yeah, Fred.
Yeah.
Freddy, yeah. I feel like
Harnessing the
I
power
feel
of
like
the
I had to say it. I love that. I love that.
It's a good movie.
so
There's a
much.
series on it, right? Okay. Back to the topic.
Oh God,
Disney
there's a
Plus.
series? Oh no. Is it
I
good?
want to see it. I just haven't at the time.
Oh,
We'll watch
okay,
together.
no, that doesn't sound like
Okay.
very good. Okay, anyways, go.
So-
yeah, we will. After the dating shows.
Coming up, by the way. Okay.
Yep,
This
definitely.
is like a
Dated
short
and related
breather to our
coming
episode.
up.
But okay. Back to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, technological advances and also that it provides a lot of job opportunities in that industry. It also another thing is that this all like space exploration itself gives a lot of, I'm gonna say, inspiration, even though that might sound like a weak point, but it's not. The fact that it gives inspiration, a reason for people to actually study science and study astronomy. It gives it a huge this exploration and the feats that we've done by space exploration gives people a reason to actually study sciences and astronomy, and that is also a huge reason why space exploration is necessary, because other than just technological advances, it is helping the people, and it is helping them in the fact that it's motivating them, or it's giving them some sort of a goal to be. like a goal to be an astronaut, or a goal to be some part of NASA or some part of ISRO, right?
So in that regard, your point is it's
Creating
creative.
jobs, inspirational, giving people to study and all of that, right? Which is also something huge, and you could say that it doesn't require that much money, but again, make like doing those feats and the stuff we've done using space exploration, like going to Mars at some points, even going on the moon and all of that, it gives people a reason to study, and that's also another big part of why it's necessary. Go on.
Okay, but I feel that that's a bit of a minor point. Okay,
It
so
might
right,
seem like a minor
This actually-
point, but
this actually-
I disagree.
okay.
It otherwise I don't think that many people would be interested because that stuff seems cool. The fact that being an astronaut going to space,
Yeah, no, it
it
definitely
creates some sort of motivation,
100%.
right? And yeah,
Right, 100%. Okay, so definitely in that regard, I will agree with you. It does create space, that it does create interest in the outer world, which we absolutely
do need,
100%
yeah.
need
It
because we
helps
always
solve
need that. We do
education
need
as
that
well.
curiosity, absolutely. And I'm well aware that not all space related jobs, actually a very minor percentage of that job is being an
Yeah.
astronaut. But one of the minor points I had was that it could actually create a bit of you talked about quality of life on Earth. It could create quality of life on missions in space to go on a bit of a downgrade because obviously from the official NASA website, uh, the 5 hazards of human spaceflight itself. Obviously, not all of space flight is through human mission, but in that regard, radiation that we face in the outer world, isolation and confinement, the
but
distance
Nikhil,
from
but Nikhil,
Earth,
I could
gravity, or
consider that point
yeah.
insignificant as a whole, because there are some jobs that just require it. For example, being a part of the army is no joke either. I'm going to assume that's like the same situation.
Right.
Isolation, harsh environments, which you just said, like radiation. Yeah,
No,
so
I understand
I
that.
think that
Yeah.
makes no sense.
I understand that that's the sacrifice.
Yeah,
people
for
will
other
have
jobs
to
as well
make,
on Earth
100%.
itself, and like military spending is also something that's very huge. Like if you were to say space exploration isn't worth
Right.
it, is military expansion worth it? Right? Another huge thing.
Yeah, and that again all comes down to
Exactly.
political
So even in a
differences.
perfect world where you could say that there is no military spending, in that case I believe that because military spending is again it's a way bigger part than space exploration. For example, that 0.5%, I think in some countries it's more than 15% at points, which again I might be underballing this or like lowballing this a lot.
You want me
Yeah,
underballing
I think so.
15%?
Actually, like if you want to check it right now,
More than 50. Wow. Okay. That's all right. So yeah, in that regard, a lot of military, and this is US. It's just US we're talking about. They spent 801 billion in 2021 on defense itself, which is much more than a lot of other countries even combined. So
I mean, in the countries that also do space exploration, not really.
okay, no. So in the countries that also focus a lot of their money on space exploration, that's not an issue. So obviously, I can't say that they should spend less money on defense and put that into problems. But even creating the breeding ground for innovation or for finding an alternative through a little bit of funding that they might have to spend will still be a fraction of the amount that they will eventually spend on space travel, and then eventually after that for like comprehensively trying to find that alternative.
So basically, you're trying to say that we should be investing in the Earth, like investing on problems on the
100%.
Earth.
That is my overarching point, is that we should prioritize Earth first before looking at other planets.
So-
And some parts of space exploration are 100% accurate, and they are necessary.
Mhm.
But a lot of it can be cut down to focus on potentially the greatest planet we will ever live on.
But again, so this is I'm going to say the final point that we'll make, because it's been going on for 40 minutes. But the final counter to that is that again, there are tons of advantages, right? And the tons of advantages that I've been saying are stuff that, first of all, innovation, technological development. This is all stuff that might help us. I'm saying might again, but there are examples also, like people researching on the International Space Station. So like even for diseases somehow, like I don't know how that works, but Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, asthma, heart disease. All of these have research that have been based on research on the International Space Station. Other than that, tons of efficiency in 3D printing, testing tissue chips in space and stuff like that is stuff that I found on the NASA website, which also really does help. Help those small, STEM things that are growing on Earth. So that is what I think, and that is one of the main reasons why space exploration is worth it.
So you're saying space exploration can also tackle stuff at home.
Stuff at home? I mean, yeah. I mean,
home as an Earth.
It affects everyone, and it helps them in some way.
Alright.
And I would be surprised if it doesn't affect any person on Earth right now.
Alright. So again, I would like to research the Parkinson's and cancer and all of that. I would like to double check that. But if all of that is true, obviously then they are putting some kind of conscious effort into problems on Earth.
We'll put all of our sources in the description, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. We'll put a few links in the description too, so you can check it out yourself. So cool. I think we both kind of established our overarching point. Think it's still a very open-ended discussion that is free for debate in the comment section, obviously.
More on the advantages.
Sure, Adi. So, obviously, you can give your own opinion in the comment section on YouTube or whatever, on YouTube or on Spotify.
We'll put a poll or some shit.
Sure. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Music, if I'm not wrong. We're on Apple Music. We're on every single platform. If you want to share your own opinions with us, we also have an Instagram at the Quirky Brewlers Project. So that's also fun. Yeah, we will link that as well. We're probably going to forget, but we will try our best. So, yeah, that was the episode. We sincerely hope you guys enjoyed it. This is kind of a different format we're trying. We haven't done much.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We haven't done many serious episodes before. We haven't done any serious episodes before. So I'm glad we managed to do one. Yeah, I guess. But that was kind of more of a rant about how angry we are. Yeah. So, thank you so much for checking by. And
bye.